Final Word Daily. Final Word Champions Trophy Daily. I'm Cameron Ponsonby. I'm joined by cricinfo's Danyal Rasool. It's brought to you by McInnes Whiskey. And goodness gracious me, New Zealand have reached a fourth ICC final in 6 years. The fifth in 10, I believe my mathematics are correct. And to sum up today's play in 30 seconds, is Danyal Rasool.
New Zealand know how to win in Pakistan. That tri-series, three games here. They've batted 3 times, they've fielded 3 times, and they won the toss. They knew they wanted to bat first. Rachin, 513 ODI innings, just absurd. Kane not far behind him, getting 100 as well. I thought both of them took down South Africa's spin really well and set themselves up for a really nice platform on a flat wicket. Towards the end, South Africa became a little bit sloppy, dropped a couple of catches. Kane, Daryl Mitchell, and then a month ago, New Zealand scored 98 in the last 6. They scored 83 in the last 6 here, well above par. I thought 362. South Africa started a bit too slowly. There was one real partnership when Van der Dusen and Bavuma were going along that they had a sniff, but as soon as though they got out, South Africa began to lose wickets, regular intervals. David Miller's the only real resistance towards the end, but by then the damage was done, and New Zealand have coasted through another game in Pakistan. And in this country, they are the best team in the tournament.
I love that. So they're the winners of the Pakistan ICC Champions Trophy, and we'll find out if they win the whole thing of the multi-hosted competition. I'm interested in something you said, just to give some scores on the doors. So New Zealand finished on a 362 for 6, and you said that as well above par. I feel like for the most part, there was a feeling that was around about the kind of middling score for Lahore. We saw England post 350 here against Australia. It was chased simply with great ease, or a relative amount of ease. At the halfway point, we knew South Africa were going to have to be perfect, but I didn't feel that New Zealand were that far above par. I thought that South Africa were pretty good for 44 overs with the ball, and then it kind of slips dramatically away from them.
I think what England can't defend is not necessarily a good indicator of what par is. However, my rule of thumb for Lahore has always been 320, 330. That's about par. There have been bigger totals chased down here, but I think that's because the chasing side has done a really good job, as Australia did that day. But the thing is, I thought New Zealand was sort of gearing up for the big finish, and South Africa weren't really able to penetrate with wickets. And the thing that's always bearing down on you is New Zealand know how to bowl in the middle overs, especially really well here. If you look at this whole tournament, the top 3 bowlers for the most number of dot balls bowled are Michael Bracewell, Mitch Santner, Will O'Rourke. So whatever par is, New Zealand's bowling is almost set up to defend even a little bit below that. So when you get what I would argue was about 30 runs above par, it was always going to be a tall order for South Africa.
You're right. I think today was a reminder of just how excellent you have to be in high scoring run chases, because yes, you can go, it's flat out there, like it's sevens, but all you need is 2 players to play a duff shot and you're miles behind. I think that's why it's really important to kind of praise. In my head, there's 3 Centurions today. You've got Rachin Ravindra again, you've got Kane Williamson, and David Miller scored quite a funny century to finish off today's match by basically blasting 50 by himself when the match was dead and gone. He brought it up the last ball of the innings. I'm going to save that for the Hall of Fame because it was just quite a nice moment. He got his 3rd ODI century, and it didn't matter, but it was fun for him. It was fun for him, I guess. But Mitchell Santner, 3 for 43. He is such a beautiful bowler, and some people on this podcast, namely me, were very rude about Michael Bracewell's off spin a few matter of weeks ago by going, I don't get it. I do get Mitchell Santner. I think his ability, his variation of flight and pace is so impressive. And I do think he's one of those cricketers where if you were to place yourself as a club cricketer in that environment, you're not getting near it. He's flashing them through at 60 miles an hour, then he's looping them at 51, 52, and they're ragging. He's a wonderful bowler to watch. And from where South Africa were, I think they were 120. No, I've lost it. They're like 120 for 1. And then he took wickets 2, 3, and 4. Bavuma, Van der Dusen, Heinrich Klaasen, ripped them on a top middle order out of chase. He was excellent.
Yeah, I interviewed Mitch Santner about a couple of weeks ago. It's up on cricinfo if you still want to give it a go.
I've heard of that website. It's good.
One of the things he said was, when you bowl in New Zealand, you're just tempted to keep darting balls in flat, and that's what I did when I first made my debut in the first few years. But if you look at his career over the last 2 or 3 years, there's been a steady uptick in his performance. He is more economical, he takes more wickets, and I think he's a lot more varied in the way that he bowls. I thought it was interesting that one of the things he said was, if you're scared of bowling, if you're scared of tossing it up, try tossing it up slightly wider outside the batter's crease, because if you get it a little wrong and you're a bit fuller, you don't get punished quite as much as when you are in the arc. And I think that way, one of the things he's done well is he bowls quite well to left-handers who prefer that cow corner region as well, because with that variation, it's really hard to get a proper swing at it. This tournament, one of the things that's something he's been doing. The other thing I think he does better than anyone else since the start of the last World Cup, the 2023 World Cup. No one has a better economy rate than him, between overs 41 and 46. So it's not just those middle overs. He really takes it on the first half of this. You can tell I went big in terms of nerdy research on
stats guru desk. So overs 41 and 46.
So I think it does offer them a point of contrast in the way that New Zealand can bowl. I thought today's contest was a little bit between Mitch Santner and Keshav Maharaj, and Maharaj bowled well in the first 4 or 5 overs. I think he conceded 14 or 15 in the first 4, and then Rachin and Kane really took him on. Both of them averaged about more than 7 runs an over against him, and that's not the kind of thing that Santner almost ever allows anyone to do against him anymore. And through those middle overs, when South Africa were on this tightrope where they still had to chase over 8 and over, still had to take risks against a bowler who doesn't really allow you to take risks without punishing you, it was a tightrope that he was always going to knock them off, unless someone batted out their skins. And even though David Miller did that, by then it was too late. And New Zealand's huge total in a pressure game made it count.
I was really reminded watching Santner today. So 2 of his dismissals for Babuma and Van der Dussen had like massive amounts of dip on the ball. And if you saw Liam Livingston's dismissal against Maharaj in terms of the ball that's dipped later on, he's missed it and been stumped. Very similar vibes. One was Babuma was caught back point by Kane Williamson when Babuma was advanced, and the other one was just a kind of classical left arm spinner's dismissal. And I messaged a friend of mine who's a very good club cricketer. And he plays over in Australia now, and he plays at the same club as basically just like one of the Aussie A off spinners. And I was just intrigued. I was like, I don't understand how like finger spin can ever be that scary to face. Like, I don't understand why it would ever be that impressive. I understand why it'd be good and why it'd get you out, but I don't get it. And he was like, to be honest, I haven't really faced that guy that much. But then he name checked player he used to play with in England, who I won't really name because he didn't actually play that much. And there was this whole thing. He got released at like 25, then became kind of the best peak of his craft at 30, 31 whilst he was in the kind of playing league cricket. And the way he described it, he said, whenever I faced a ball from him in the nets, he'd release it and I think it was going to hit me in the face, and then it would just drop out of nowhere. And that was what the anecdote I kept on returning to watching Santner bowl today. I thought he was absolutely fantastic, and kind of the tightrope analogy you used, kind of South Africa had to be on there the whole way. Someone was going to push him off, and today it was Santner. In terms of South Africa, there's obviously very easy kind of chokers tropes to be made about kind of whenever they lose in any ICC competition. It's one of the curses of having that tag, is that you're not allowed to just lose. You can only be embarrassing in any sort of form of defeat. I didn't. So I wonder if you disagree with me on this, because I didn't think they had choked or capitulated today. I just thought they'd lost.
Yeah, I think they were facing a better side in these conditions. New Zealand just know how to do things very well here. They, like South Africa, they were here for that tri-series. They worked out a formula where they are able to set up a good platform. They're able to accelerate with Phillips. They're able to then bowl very well with 2 really good new ball bowlers, and then through the middle as well. And I think they did all of those aspects better than South Africa did. I'm not inclined to say they choked. The only thing I'll say is this is the second consecutive big game that Marco Jansen, one of the players that they really rely on, hasn't really delivered. You go back to that World Cup final against India. This game, they really needed him to do well. It didn't happen towards the end. Maybe they lost their disciplines, but it never felt to me like that was the pressure of a big game. I think having made that final, I never felt this particular semi-final was that sort of game where South Africa were left
Yeah.
wondering, what if we do something wrong and then become a laughing stock again? I just think New Zealand were a better side, and they've shown that against every side they've played in Pakistan over the last month. And yeah, regardless of whatever was on this game, on paper they're a better side, and on the field they showed that.
You picked up on a good point there. Not necessarily about Marco Jansen in isolation, but South Africa's team as a whole today. Ngidi got picked up 3, Rabada got 2, so they did pick up 6 wickets, all 6 wickets. Maharaj went wicketless, but all of them went out above 7 runs and over. There wasn't anyone. Aidan Markram with 4 overs was the only bowler who managed to go below a run a ball, which I know if you're talking about a score of 360, people have to go for runs for people to go above 7 and over. But normally there's like one person where they're able to hold it together a little bit more, and then the other bowlers are attacked. Whereas there was a blanket leaking of runs, and the people who were scoring those runs were Rachin Ravindra and Kane Williamson, which gives me the chance to use one of the easiest tropes of any journalist when an older statesman is batting with the young apprentice at the same time. I've already used one cliche. I'm going to double down. You can say it's New Zealand's past, present, and future at the crease together. It was a wonderful partnership, and again, I must have been in a really bad mood when I did the show about New Zealand early this competition. Which I said I wasn't convinced about Ravindra, and I said I thought Bracewell was clubby, and I've just 180'd on both those issues. Ravindra played an on drive today in an over against Björn Mulder, where I think he pulled him over the mid wicket. He took the over about 15, and there was one on drive where I went, okay, I'm chips in. This is amazing. This is wonderful to watch. It is. I'm feeling good. I'm feeling positive because I think the last time we did a show together, we talked about how things were in a good shape. South African cricket was in quite a good shape, and today we're going to talk about Kiwi cricket. I know there's a chance that Kane Williamson could feasibly retire at any moment now, but with Ravindra, they look well placed.
Yes, it's remarkable how meteoric almost his rise has been from the moment he was promoted in that World Cup game against England. He was actually promoted in a practice match just before that against Pakistan, and now it seems a little bit crazy that New Zealand were sort of using him as a bits and pieces player, that lower middle order player who will also bowl a bit of spin. But I think if you spoke to anyone within New Zealand domestic cricket about 3 or 4 years ago, they always used to say one of the stars we've got coming up is Rachin Ravindra. So some people who may have watched his prodigious talent at that time may not be surprised at what he's doing, but it's still rare at international level to transition so seamlessly. It's worth remembering. Rachin now has more centuries in ICC events than Kane Williamson. He was 2 ahead. He's 1 ahead now because Kane Williamson also scored 100. But it's the fact that he's so young and he looks so composed, and that he's got all the shots. It's really hard to pinpoint weaknesses in his game. He started off. This was the second longest in terms of number of balls, time he took to get off the mark. And I thought maybe South Africa sort of have got a nail here because New Zealand didn't start so brightly. But then he caught up with that. He went through the phases of his innings fairly seamlessly. When he got to about 75, accelerated. There was a bit in the middle where I thought Maharaj and the spinners, Aidan Markram, were dragging things back for South Africa. There was a 4 and a 6 he hit of Maharaj, which I thought was superb. He was forcing the issue slightly, but he was good enough to do so. And I thought just the way he accelerated and then decelerated as the situation required showed a degree of maturity that does belie both his years and his experience. Having Williamson at the other end obviously can't have helped, but this New Zealand side is just so good all around. Feels like there's a lot of strength in depth as well. In the bowling, you had Lockie Ferguson ruled out, Ben Sears ruled out, and they've been able to shake it off without too much concern. And almost looks like this is their best, essentially their best side. Anyone in that 15 could come in, and with New Zealand, it's never about individual talent; it's about the team. It's a cliche, but it's one that has served them well and continues to serve them well. I don't know what else to say about them.
The Pakistan professionals. I love the idea that New Zealand are the best team in the world at playing in Pakistan. I think that's fun. In terms of more stats, more numbers.
They've been here often enough. They've been here
Ravindra,
five times in 3 years.
I only really twigged just the intense nature of the international merry-go-round when covering the Pakistan versus England Test Series 2022, and it was the last day in Karachi. I remember being in the hotel and I was looking up. So the Test Series had finished the day before, and I looked up in the lobby and it was New Zealand checking in, and I was like, "Oh my God, this is how quick this just keeps on happening." We've got England and New Zealand in the same hotel at the moment. Ravindra's 5th ODI 100, same number as Brendan McCullum. We've got Williamson, his 15th ODI ton. He went scoop crazy. Old dogs learning new tricks. I'm just lifting this from CricViz's Twitter account. Kane Williamson, not generally known for his reverse sweeps and scoops. Williamson attempted them 7 times today and scored 12 runs before being dismissed of it. In his entire ODI career before today, he has scored just 7 runs playing those shots. So you went from 7 to 19 with scoops. You look like you've hated that, but that's fine. I'm going to carry on.
No, I haven't. You give me a hard time for mentioning Santner's 41st to 46 start, and then you pull this out.
Yeah. I've got another one. Hey, I've got another one coming soon. Before we move on to the Hall of Fame, I want to put out a thought experiment with Glenn Phillips. So, since the 2023 World Cup, Glenn Phillips has been sensational, both across the board, but particularly in this format. With the bat, give or take, let me off, it's a few kind of decimal places below. Since the 2023 World Cup, he's averaged 50 in this format, striking at pretty much 120. Again, in the death overs, in the final overs of ODIs this year, he scored 235 runs in 6 innings at a strike rate of 155, and he's only been dismissed once. That's good. And my thought experiment for you, you don't have to answer this now, but it's just one for the audience, one for the listeners, one for the viewers. If you valued all the 4 skills of cricket equally, which obviously they're not, batting and bowling is more important than fielding, for instance, but for the sake of this argument, we're going to value them all equally. Batting out of 10, bowling out of 10, fielding out of 10, wicket keeping out of 10. Is Glenn Phillips in the debate for the greatest cricketer of all time? The greatest all-rounder cricketer? Because obviously, like Garfield Sobers, batting and bowling above, but we're valuing fielding. And I didn't see Sobers ever plucking out those one-handers. Just think about it. Just think, this is how it could work.
I will.
Phillips, 7 with the bat, 5 with the ball, 9 in the field, 6 with the gloves. That equals 18, 27. Sobers, we'll give him 2 9s with bat and ball, 0 with the gloves. We'll give him 2. Why not? 20. He's not a 7 in the field. Maybe he is. I don't know. I never saw him play. Just think about it. And whilst you do think about it, we're going to go for a break with our friends CBUS Super. Hey, we're back. Final Word Daily, Champions Trophy Daily. It's time for the Hall of Fame, brought to you by McInnes Whiskey. McInnes Whiskey specialises in sourcing branded single malt Scotch whiskey casks for investment purposes. Like classic cars, whiskey is known as a wasting asset, so the gains on it are tax-free. In other words, it is free of capital gains tax, so you keep all of your profits. Why Scotch whiskey specifically? It's all about the brand, and Scotch whiskey is the Ferrari of whiskies, so there's a much better chance of appreciation. This has been my hard sell. Grouping with some mates, big birthday, invest together, big event. If you're all turning 40 together, you're all turning 30 together, you can have this and you can check back in a decade's time and it'll be lovely. If you want 20% off, get in touch with them at sales@mckinniswhiskey.com and cite ICC Whiskey Cricket 20. The cost prices start at £3,625 for a 2024 Talibardine. And so 20% off, that's like 750 quid from that. Bargains. Right. Hall of Fame. You can kick it off and I'll finish us off.
I'm going to go with, you mentioned fielding's not as important as batting and bowling, but I'm going to go with a bit of fielding. I mentioned South Africa were on a bit of a tightrope. Heinrich Klaassen was probably best placed to take them off that tightrope, and it was he tries to go after Mitch Santner because they can't really afford to be conservative against any bowler. Goes to long on. Matt Henry runs across, puts in a dive, potentially hurts his shoulder. We still don't know how he is. We'll find out at the pressers, I imagine. And takes a superb catch. Klaasen goes 3 of 7. We see Miller later score a 67 ball 100 unbeaten. You can imagine if Klaasen had stuck around with him for another 50 of those runs, might have been a completely different context, but it wasn't. And I thought potentially that may have been the last nail in the coffin for South Africa, and that's going to be my play of the day.
I'm going to follow that up with, I think it wasn't Willow Rourke who threw the ball in. I think it was Bracewell. And it's at the end of the match. The game is done, but David Miller is basically having a net in the middle as he's coming back as he's called Ngidi back for basically a suicidal 2, just to be like, get me back on strike. We've got like 9 balls left and need like 60 to win. And Willow Rourke was so casual that he caught the ball. He didn't realise Ngidi was still 2/3 of the way down the track. And so he just flicks the ball back at the stumps without really looking, misses. And Santner's next to him going, what are you doing? We would have won. And he's like, okay. And then Kyle Jamieson gets belted everywhere. And David Miller scores 100 off the last ball of the match, which confirms his side have lost the Champions Trophy semi-final. He does a little baby back rock celebration. No, helmet stays on. And that was the end. It was a very bizarre finish to the match. But it hasn't been a bizarre finish to this episode of the Final Word. Did you see what? That was good. Right. It's brought to you by McInnes Whiskey. I'm good. Thank you very much. I'm Cameron Ponsonby. Danyal Rasool has been Danyal Rasool from cricinfo. Do think about it. Who's the best cricketer of all time? Leave your answers in the comments below or on Twitter somewhere. Everything's out of 10. And I'm going to give this show a 7.5. I think we've been all right. McInnes Whiskey. We'll see you and speak to you again tomorrow, where I'm back. You might be back as well for a preview of the final. Goodbye.